Welcome to SoulPod Studio. We're not your average social network. We're a community of professionals, enthusiasts, and students taking sustainability to the next level. Join us on our journey and get inspired by Earth heroes just like you.
Welcome back to another episode of SoulPod Studio. I'm Cassie Friesen, based in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm joined here today with an international friend, Dennis Fritsch, joining us from Germany. Dennis studied biology with a focus on marine life for his undergrad. He began his career in the deep blue as a research assistant for ocean research in South Africa. He also spent several years as a research lead for Responsible Investor, covering various responsible investing topics. More recently, he has worked for the United Nations Environment Program Finance Initiative, or UNEP-FI, helping to support sustainability initiatives in blue finance, a relatively new topic that I'm really looking forward to hearing more about. Dennis, I'm super excited to learn more about your journey and some of the key projects you're working on to help propel a more sustainable world and ensure a healthy future for our ocean.
Thank you very much for having me, Cassie. Very happy to chat today. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So, Dennis, I know you've always had a passion for the ocean, biology, and the natural world. Can you tell us more about your background and how you ended up in a career at the United Nations?
Yeah, it depends how far you want to go back. I grew up very landlocked in Germany. The first time I saw salt water and the sea was probably, I was like maybe 11 or 12 years old, quite late. But I loved underwater documentaries. David Attenborough's work, other brilliant people bringing the underwater world to everyone's screens really inspired me. And that also, after high school, really triggered my wish to study biology. And the course was general biology, but quite quickly became clear that marine biology was the way to go. I also had a focus on neurobiology, so also did that alongside marine, but the marine was really almost always my passion. And then after my academic career finished with me getting a PhD, I decided that wasn't for me, and I wanted to do. I had an urge, so to speak, to do more about ocean sustainability, to as you say so nicely, propel it to the forefront, because at that time the whole conversation about plastics in the oceans was really coming up, and of course all fishing, all the other issues were really front of mind. And that's when I joined Responsible Investor. I thought if you want to really move things in the world, for better or worse, you really need to put the money behind it. And therefore, field of responsible investment, sustainable finance was quite attractive, and I'm very thankful that Responsible Investor took a chance on me. Essentially, I'm coming from the scientific side to this new world. And yeah, as you said, I headed the research department there, working on a lot of different topics around ESG, working with pension funds and asset managers, advisors as well. And amongst other topics there, I really put forward the topic of the blue economy, and I wrote the first report on investor sentiment around this topic. And also afterwards, there was another report on biodiversity finance and investment, which was leaked, but not as focused. And then after that, I joined UNEP-FI, and I've been here for 3.5 years, and very much enjoying it. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I will say you took my childhood dream of becoming a marine biologist and being in that field. You took my dream.
It was my dream too. I always wanted to become a deep sea biologist. But I don't think I ever count as that.
Yeah.
I never actually worked as a marine.
No, you have the mindset. Yeah, absolutely. You have the mindset. Like... You took that dream of mine. But no, it's so great. It's so awesome to see how your career has progressed. And I will mention that you were amazing when I worked with you. When I worked, partnered with you when you were at Responsible Investor. I'm so glad we had that opportunity to do that. So I know that you have spent a great deal of your career focused on blue finance. Can you explain what blue finance is in simple terms, and how does it fit into the blue economy? which is really the sustainable use of ocean resources?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's a topic that's quite new. This whole blue economy, blue finance conversation. It comes obviously on the back of the ocean being in quite a bad state these days, sadly, due to human actions, human economic activities, let's say it like that, that are mostly extractive and harmful, and people are starting to realize that the ocean actually has a lot of value in a healthy state. It provides a lot of goods, but also ecosystem services. As you said, producing oxygen is one not insignificant part of it, but there's others, obviously providing animal protein and plant protein via marine creatures, providing flood protection in the form of mangroves or seagrass meadows, coastal areas, providing spaces for recreation, and multiple other things. And there was a study, I think, a couple of years ago by WWF that tried to estimate what, in a monetary sense, as much as you estimate that, what is the worth of all these services, and they found out that at minimum it would be around $2.5 trillion per year, and that obviously is incredible, and is equivalent to the seventh largest economy in GDP terms. So I think that is first time probably people realizing. I mean, when I say people, I say the people talking to financial institutions, realizing if we need to conserve this space, we need to conserve this, as sad as it sounds, asset value. That only works if the ocean is healthy as a system. But the blue economy narrative really is one of looking at blue or oceanic sectors in a holistic sense. So that means realizing that there is an impact from coastal pollution on coastal users, divers, surfers, but also coastal fisheries are impacted by coastal pollution. Maritime transport impacts other sectors. So there's a high amount of interlinkages between ocean sectors, and the blue economy really advocates that looking at these as a whole is way more valuable than looking at these sectors in silos, which has been really the way to go before. And the fisheries people would look at fisheries exclusively, the shipping people would look at shipping exclusively, and so on. And in addition to that, the blue economy can mean different things for different people. There's not really a globally accepted definition, although many organizations mean the same thing. But for some organizations and countries, the blue economy means any activity that goes on the ocean, including also harmful activities like industrial fisheries or offshore oil and gas. Whereas at UNEP and other organizations, we really always stress that we talk about the sustainable blue economy, just to make it excruciatingly clear that we talk about the sustainable part of this ocean economy. We see this really as a vision for all of these ocean sectors to transition to. In a sense, fisheries in a current state mostly are not sustainable, but they can transition to sustainable wild capture fisheries. Same is true for aquaculture. Same is true for maritime transport, and so on. And tourism, of course, is another good example where currently, it's not super sustainable, whereas sustainable ecotourism would be part of a sustainable economy. And that's obviously a very long story. To cut it quite short, the reason why we focus on the financial side of things is because these sectors are powered by the money that comes from banks, insurers, investors, of course also governments, but a big chunk is coming from the private sector. And when we talk about blue finance, we really talk about finance that is going into this transition, or let's say trying to move the finance away from harmful approaches towards ocean positive, sustainable approaches that support a sustainable economy. That is really what we talk about when we say the word blue finance. And as I said just now, banks, insurers, investors, they have huge leverage to change the course of these sectors quite quickly. Because, of course, the financing and investment is what they all depend on. And so if the money, the people with the money put pressure, then change can happen quite quickly.
Absolutely. And I love what you said. It's all interconnected, right? We can't really look at it from a siloed approach. We need to look at everything holistically, the maritime transport, the waste management, and the way that we're actually, preventing this plastic pollution from going into our oceans. We need to ensure, that we're not overfishing to have that wealth of biodiversity in our oceans. We need to be thinking about how we travel, where we're traveling, and making sure that we're, leaving the lands that around the beaches and the coast as they were when we came. And then, of course, climate change, this is a direct correlation of human activity. So how do all of these things fit together, and how can we ensure that we're supporting this transition, like you said, in a positive way?
Completely agree. And I just wanted to add, for financial institutions, it's not necessarily always clear why they should care about ocean health initially. I'm sure not many banks globally are thinking about ocean health when they think about their loan book, for example. But to take the example that you mentioned, sustainable fishery, in industrial fisheries currently, if you're an insurer who insures fishing vessels, if the ocean is overfished, then 10 years down the line, you might not have any vessels to insure. And so you're losing business. Same is true for banks, same is true for investors, right? So there's a huge risk in inaction, actually. And again, WWF published a really good report 2 years ago where they estimated that inaction, business as usual approach to ocean sectors, would leave around 2/3 of the global economy, as in all listed companies, 2/3 of all listed companies, around $8.4 trillion out of pocket over the next 15 years. So that's huge numbers, and that should be an incredible incentive for action from the financial sector to protect that asset value, essentially.
Do you think there's enough support and capital injection going into the blue economy, or do you think there's room for progress?
Definitely room for progress. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing the job I'm doing, I think. One of the issues is that there isn't necessarily a lot of awareness, as I just mentioned. And where there is awareness, there isn't always expertise or capacity to act, or the knowledge of how to act in the right way. So, this is really a new topic for a lot of the financial institutions we work with. And maybe I add as well, UNFI, we are part of the UN Environment Program, and we really try to catalyze action across the financial system to align economies with sustainable development as a whole. So that means the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Climate Agreement, and Global Biodiversity Framework as well. And my work, as I said, specifically focuses on the ocean side of things, and this is really new. Climate has been on the radar for these organizations for a long time, and they're really starting to grapple with it now. Of course, there are ups and downs, as we all know, but that's really way more known. That the ocean is so new; it's really uncharted waters for all of them, and so there isn't necessarily a track record of successful projects. There isn't obvious projects that are around that can be easily be invested in. Not always is it clear what are the solutions to the problems that we're facing. And so, all this work is really what we're doing right now to bring the financial sector to a place where, a lot of capital can flow into the necessary activities and away from harmful activities. So I would say across the board, there's probably underfunding in most of the sectors for transition. There's some examples where, there's quite a lot of funding flowing in, offshore wind is really hot right now, and that's a lot of people are investing. Sustainable aquaculture on quite small scale, but it's a hot topic as well. But then when you talk about, sustainable wild capture fisheries or decarbonization of shipping, there's a huge amount of money that, is necessary. Similarly true for, coastal and marine protected areas. There's not nearly enough money flowing into that. So overall, I'd say underfunded and more progress needed. But obviously, that's why we're here.
Underfunded, but also big room for opportunity, big opportunity set in terms of jobs and careers, right? As this transition, is imperative, because the health of our oceans really is going to be what ensures that we have a healthy future in the years to come. So I agree with you. I think underfunded, and I think that there's just a lot of room and there's a lot of progress to be made. And I think that's why what you're doing at UNEP FI is so key. And I would love to hear about some of the key projects that you and your team have undertaken recently to really help educate people on this topic and to really support the sustainable blue economy. Could you highlight a few of these for us, Dennis?
Yes, of course, it's a pleasure. Yeah, I mean, we have our octopus arms in a lot of different pots, but really the main thing that we work on is, as you say, awareness raising, capacity building on this topic. So we host the so-called Sustainable Blue Economy Finance Principles that are the gold standard globally if you want to align your financing and capital flows with the SDG 14. So they're quite a high-level framework on how to align capital flows with ocean health, broadly speaking. And they've been around since 2018, these principles, and we now host it and to really have built a very active community around these principles. So we use these principles as a framework, as I just said, for financial actors to align to and to implement across the lines of business. So we have a network of now, I think it's 88 institutions across banking, insurance, investment, but also NGOs, scientists, research houses, the OECD as well, for example. So big network that works with us on the one hand, creating resources and tools for financial actors to actually do the implementation of these principles, and helping them to realize what that means, and on the other end also promoting this topic as a whole and spreading the love, so to speak. So a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last 3 years, I've been involved 3.5 years involved, is really centered or built on these principles and the network. So two things I would highlight maybe are our very practical and market first blue finance guides for financial institutions. We published 2 over the last couple of years, Turning the Tide, Diving Deep, and they are very pragmatic and practical handbooks for people working at a bank or at an investment house, for example, that either want to work within ocean sectors or already involved in ocean sectors, and highlight, what are the environmental and social impact and drivers of these sectors, and that crucially making it link to materiality. Why as a bank should you care, aside from maybe a moral standpoint, or why should you care from a risk perspective? What is the risk of not doing anything or continuing the way you're doing things right now? And then we, as you mentioned and highlight rightly, we know we have a focus not only on the bad stuff with the risks, but also on opportunities. So we actually have within these guidances science-based recommendations of how to deal with certain activities across these sectors. So we have a kind of red flags across these sectors that should not be financed anymore, that should not be invested in anymore. As an example, maybe bottom trawling in a marine protected area would be a no-go, that should not be supported because it's highly risky, highly damaging. Risky, also from our financial point of view and reputationally. And at the other end of the spectrum, we also highlight, what is considered best practice across these sectors, and therefore presents opportunities to invest or finance, get involved in it, and also presents opportunities to engage with already existing clients on topics that are of interest, things like data transparency and gender equity, for example. So these guidances are available online and available for free, and we are essentially now working on implementing them. That's what we've been doing this year. So we've published a couple of more practical resources around things like exclusions list, for example, that we know banks and investors like to use, and they're really used to them as well. These are ways to translate this new topic into formats and structures that these financial institutions are used to. Exclusions list is one of them. The other ones that we look at this year specifically are collaborative investor engagement, specifically on seafood. We're working on this with a couple of partner organizations, WWF, Planet Tracker, the World Benchmarking Alliance, FAIR. So that's very exciting, and hoping will result in some real on-the-ground impact. And additionally, we're also working on a methodology for our network to start implementing these recommendations in practice by setting targets and writing exclusion policies where necessary. So that's something that we do collaboratively across the network throughout this year. So it's also very exciting. And apart from that, what we always do on a rolling basis is, capacity building, trainings, webinars, and things like that, speaking out of events. And then we give feedback and are involved in a lot of industry and market level initiatives. For example, the EU taxonomy. We're developing the first global guidance on blue water steps, hopefully out soon. But also the science-based targets networks, trying to, as the name says, set science-based targets for ocean sectors. For companies, we're also involved in that. So we try to be involved as much as possible in what's going on beyond that UNEP sphere of work, because there's a lot going on. This is really a fast-moving field. So it's quite exciting.
You have a lot of octopus arms out there, Dennis. You and your team, you have a lot going on. How do you ensure that you capture all of the feedback from all the different, portfolio management teams, analysts, different financial organizations from the different, FAIR and, any other collaborative organizations? How do you ensure you take all of that feedback and implement that for then, let's say, your next piece of research piece that comes out? How do you take all that and really consolidate it and boil it down, and then also see what kind of impact you guys at UNEP or UNEP FI are really having? How do you boil that down?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The answer is a lot of work, but it's also fun. So for the guidances specifically, these were not just developed by me sitting in my room writing away. This was a really collaborative effort every time across our network. So we, for each of them, had like a 9-month period of development where we had monthly working group calls with around 70 institutions to give updates on the writing and then get feedback on, problems, get brainstorming support for different topics. And our network was incredibly involved, and I'm eternally grateful for the time and motivation to be part of this process twice. Well, 2.5 times, because obviously they're involved in it right now again with the methodology for targets. But it was an amazing experience to be able to draw so much expertise, and then at the end of the process, everyone had the possibility to give written feedback as well, and have one-on-one calls needed. And then lastly, it also went through internally UNEP systems of checks and balances, so to speak. So it's every time quite an involved process, but it ensures that what we're putting out is, on the one hand, science-based. As UNEP, we are a science-driven organization, so we need to make sure that what we put out is based on the best available science. But we also really want to make sure that what we put out is usable by our audience and our network. Now, if we put something out that sounds great but is practically not doable, that we haven't really achieved our goal. So the input from our network was really valuable to make sure that they're all behind what we put out, and now are implementing it, which is great to see.
Yeah, the implementation part is really critical, right? Because that's where you can really make a huge, impact. So sounds like a really collaborative approach, and I can't wait to see what will be the next piece that you guys will put out. So we'll definitely, keep our eyes out for that. So today you're Associate Program Lead in Nature. can you tell me what a typical day looks like for you? Because everyone's so interested. You work for the United Nations Environment Program. Tell us what that looks like. Are you out there on the ground? Are you, back at home going through all these collaborative pieces, reviewing content? Are you attending biodiversity conferences? What does a day or maybe even a week look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And probably all of the above across time. So I would say currently a lot of internal meetings, whenever we develop content ourselves, there's a lot of managing of internal, teams and projects to make sure there is progress, and if there are any issues, we flag that and reviewing timelines and things like that. So a lot of internal meetings, and that means within UNFI, so our nature team that works on not just ocean things, biodiversity, nature as a whole. So we look at interlinkages between us and the task force for nature-related financial disclosures, for example. Or another topic that I deal with a lot is food systems. So we also want to make sure that everything's, fitting into the bigger picture. But it also means internal meetings with colleagues from the UN Environment Program that work not with financial actors, but with governments on things like policy making and ocean governance. So check in regularly with them to make sure that it's aligned. And then in times of big collaborative projects like right now, and to be honest, over the last couple of years, it's always been like this, a lot of collaboration across the board. And so I have regular external meetings with project partners or potential collaborators, or also just the network that we have to make sure that we stay on top of all the developments. As I said, it's quite a fast field, so sometimes hard to keep up on all the developments and publications that are coming out. So a lot of meetings with external partners as well, and interaction with our network, of course. So we have working groups ongoing currently on target setting and on seafood finance as well. So checking in with that, and we also have regular events. So there's a lot of event prepping, speaking at webinars or workshops. And then, sometimes these events are abroad or, somewhere. So obviously during COVID, everything was virtual, but slowly but surely things get back to more normal. And so there's a bit of travel involved, which is always exciting to see the colleagues in the flesh. A highlight last year was definitely the UN Ocean Conference in Lisbon. For the first time, we had big get-together of our network that has previously only really met virtually. So that was really exciting. And then, obviously, while we're doing the projects, you have to think of the next projects as well. So there's a lot of thinking about strategy and how we frame this, like what is needed next for the sustainable economy, specifically that for me. But there's a lot of moving parts, and we, as I said, try to have our octopus arms in a lot of different pots as well, not just our own work program, but we prepare speaking points and briefs for high-level officials at the UN, but also briefings for the G20, for example. Or I recently spoke at the EU ministerial meetings in June, and other global blue finance initiatives and projects like, for the IFC or the World Bank, the Global Fund for Coral Reefs, and whatever our partners are doing. As I said, we have a big network with a lot of NGOs and other partners that constantly work within their own space in the wider blue economy or finance space. And we always want to make sure that what they're doing, what we're doing is aligned and can work together. So an example here would be the collaborative investor engagement that we're planning now, where we have a lot of partners in this project, which is exciting, and each partner brings in their own resources that can be useful for this process. We bring contact to financial institutions and that working group and our guidances, but the World Benchmarking Alliance, for example, has a seafood stewardship index of the most responsible seafood companies, and that really works quite nicely together when you bring it together. So collaboration is really a big part of my day-to-day, I would say, and management of partnerships and things like this.
What are some of the key topics and trends that you see right now in the different conferences or events or roundtables that you're talking at? What are some of the key topics that you're covering right now around the sustainable blue economy and finance?
Way to narrow it down. Yes, that's a good question. I mean, I think there's one topic that's always at the forefront is seafood, and that means wild catch fisheries. It's always at the front of mind because it brings together so many different topics. It brings together climate change impacts, it brings together livelihoods and nutrition. So that really is a big nexus topic, seafood, and so that's really a big topic for us this year. What also was really popular, it continues to be really popular, is nature-based solutions. So that means having or using natural systems to the benefit of nature, but also people. Things like mangroves would be nature-based solutions because they provide flood and storm protection for coastal communities. They provide erosion protection. They provide protection from sea level rise. They are nurseries for marine life, and they also sequester carbon at a really high rate. So they have a lot of co-benefits, and they're way more effective, for example, at protecting coastal communities from flooding than are seawalls. They also grow, over time. So the seawall would be gray infrastructure, whereas mangrove forest, a healthy mangrove forest, or using a mix between gray infrastructure and natural systems would be considered a nature-based solution. So that's really a hot topic right now because, again, it links that nature field, the biodiversity topic, with climate topic, which is, of course, always bigger and it's been on a lot of people's minds for a long time. So linking these topics is quite popular these days, I would say.
And some other nature-based solutions, wouldn't another one be like seaweed gardens or seaweed farming? Would that be another example, or could you maybe give a couple more nature-based solutions that you're focused on right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, seaweed is a really hot topic actually because there's a lot of potential for seaweed to sequester carbon as well, and it helps clear the water. So again, this co-benefits I think is really a guiding theme for all nature-based solutions, I would say. But there's really loads. My favorite example are always mangroves because they work so well. But I think in the adaptation and mitigation space, they're really quite out nature-based solutions because you kind of try and do good on several ends. But there's more obscure ways of doing it, like sand motor, for example, that is replenishing sand via natural processes for beaches and other topics. But we have case studies on our website actually for those that are interested in learning more about what's actually going on the ground. So there are loads of examples on our website for those of you listening that are more inclined to learn about nature-based solutions. And it's also beyond the ocean realm, also a big topic.
And I know that mangroves are definitely on the decline because of, different climate change effects. How could we help as individuals to, support these types of nature-based solutions, or just be more educated around them? What would you recommend for individuals?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and not necessarily that easy one to answer, I would say, because, of course, education must be number one. You need to be educated about things before you can act, and that we find is true on an individual level, and is true on a company, finance institution, government level even. So that definitely is a crucial step number one. Individual actions and voices count very much. You can demand transparency in certain sectors. That you as an individual are buying a product from. That again goes beyond the ocean realm. It doesn't cover just things like fisheries, but it also covers textiles and fashion and other topics. So knowing where your stuff comes from is always really helpful to reveal underlying, where there might be issues. And then, voting or supporting representatives that push for ocean positive legislation and policy and protection, crucially. That's really a key thing that I'm also doing personally. And then lastly, sometimes maybe overlooked as an individual. I talk about us working with banks and investors, and it sounds quite high level and a bit removed from the real world. But if you have a pension, you are an investor, so demand that your pension fund looks at its investments and screens it, or maybe doesn't invest in the bad stuff, and updates its investment policy if it's not to your liking or not in accordance with science. So you can, become active on different fronts as an individual, I would say. And climate action, in the end, is also an ocean action, right? One of the biggest threats to ocean ecosystems is climate change. So that is, whenever you act on climate, then you also act for the ocean, although it might not sometimes might feel a bit remote, but it's still true. And lastly, obviously, as an individual, you're free to do what you want with your life, but you can study biology. That's one thing I recommend to everyone. I really loved studying biology. That was amazing. It was an amazing experience, and learning about life on Earth as a whole and the system of the planet and how it works. That was really incredible. So, make it your vocation. Study biology, work for the United Nations if you can. Work within your career to better ocean health in some way or other. And I'm sure in most career paths you can do at least a bit.
I love that. And you're really doing it, full spectrum. So in addition to being at UN at EPFI, you are also a mentor. I see at both the University of Oxford in their sustainability program, as well as a mentor at the Sustainable Ocean Alliance. Can you share with us how you support these organizations and really what they're trying to achieve?
Yeah, it's a fun part of my day when I get to do this.
Aside from changing diapers, right? For your
Exactly.
6-month-old.
Yeah, exactly. Although that's also fun, I have to say, weirdly. Yeah, it's really interesting to work with the younger generation and see the excitement they have about these topics. So with the University of Oxford, I did that last year. This year is actually not going. I might have to update my LinkedIn, but that was really supporting master's students on anything ocean related. So there was a lot of kind of advice on specific projects or that link to biodiversity of the ocean, and also career advice. And I also supervised a master's thesis, for example, this year. So that was fun. For the Sustainable Ocean Alliance, they're a big network of what they call ecopreneurs. So it's startups or early stage companies that work within the blue space, and for that it's way more specific topics that relate to the blue economy and blue finance. So that was a nice balance actually. But as a whole, it's great to work with the younger generation, get them excited about this topic. And this is a fast moving space, and we need all hands on deck. And therefore, it's great to be able to do this work.
All hands on deck, literally. I love that. So as kind of like a closing or getting toward our closing, from a more general standpoint, how can we all do our part to ensure a healthy ocean for our future generations? How can we get involved? I know you've mentioned some ideas already, but for young people that want to maybe even work at the United Nations someday, or they want to just get involved within our ocean's health, where do you think that they should start?
Yeah, I think it definitely doesn't harm to start from a point where you appreciate the ocean as a system, or as a place on this earth, or ocean animals. I mean, a lot of little children are very excited about animals in general. And, keeping that appreciation up, I think it's quite hard work when you grow up, but it really helps because it motivates you to act in your personal life. Doesn't always have to go as far as making a career out of it, but to appreciate ocean life as having intrinsic value and seeing the beauty that really helped me to stick to it through. So sometimes, harder times and difficult times. So that certainly is a bonus. Being interested in general in learning more. You can always learn more. I've worked in this space for a long time. I'm learning almost every day about new things, and it's great, and it keeps you on your feet, so to speak. And then once you are confident, and you really feel like you want to fight for the ocean health, then as I said earlier, things like supporting the right people, talking to friends about the right topics, and getting involved locally. Probably, I'm sure many people out there who are interested have some type of organization that, scientific body or conservation organization that works on different topics that they're probably happy to have volunteers. So that's probably also a good way for younger people, especially, to get involved. And then once you grow older and you get out of school, and then you start studying and choosing jobs and things like this, then from our team we have quite a big mix of backgrounds. As I said, I come from the scientific side, but a lot of people within UWFI have backgrounds of international relations or political science, law, but also, of course, due to the nature of our work, from finance. A lot of people with financial backgrounds. So it's quite a big mix. So having an interesting CD probably never harms. So it also means you don't have to stick to this one path, and there's the only path to lead you where you want to go. There's a lot of ways to get where you want to go, if you just show the passion for it, I think.
I love that. Okay, so now we're going to get a little personal. I know you're big into free diving. So what's the coolest animal you ever saw, or what animal do you, down in the deep blue, what do you love the most?
Yeah, I probably might have two answers for that, maybe three. I mean, just because I think the most magical encounter I ever had was free diving at the Mesoamerican Reef in Mexico, and seeing a spotted eagle ray. It's beautiful, beautiful, graceful animal. If you don't know what a spotted eagle ray looks like, Google it. It's gonna blow your mind, I hope. But more commonly, what always is amazing to see is an octopus. Are amazing to see underwater. They're curious, and they're smart, and they change color and shape and texture, and it's really incredible. So probably these two, I would say.
That's awesome. And we just ended Shark Week, I think, last week. Do you have a favorite type of shark? I know a lot of people are really into sharks. Do you have a favorite one?
Yeah, sharks are quite good. I would probably say Greenland shark. It might be an unusual answer. Yeah, they're as the name says, they live in mostly deep and cold waters around Greenland, and other colder parts of the ocean, and they live in perpetual darkness almost. They grow incredibly old, over 300 years. So it's quite a...
They look prehistoric.
Yes, they're almost like a mythical creature, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be my favorite type of shark.
That's cool. Gives us a little bit of picture about you, Dennis. You're old soul, huh?
Yeah, I think so.
I love it. Okay, so now you're going to have to put your creative goggles on. So as a wrap up, we like to ask all of our guests this question to really close out our episodes. So if you could have one sustainability superpower to really help change the world for the better, what would it be and why?
That is a difficult question to answer. As I told you earlier, I mean, it's because I work with financial institutions and I see where, a big stumbling block is finance. I would probably say having unlimited financial resources that I can then distribute to where it's needed, probably especially, transformation, as I said, a transition to a sustainable economy, yes. I think where it's really urgently needed is also protection. And the money going into marine protected areas is often coming from governments and or philanthropy. And so there's a kind of limited scope to do proper protection of 100%. So that doesn't happen often. And if it happens, then monitoring and enforcement is really hard because the ocean is vast and is costly to monitor a vast area. And so maybe that would be maybe a bit boring superpower to have unlimited resources for ocean protection.
I love that. Really thinking with your heart right there. Well, maybe that could be your next paper, talking around the protection.
Maybe.
And then you can get some support there, and your journey here can really come to fruition. It would be it's a major undertaking, but I think that's a great superpower to have. I love that one. Well, thank you, Dennis, so much for being here today. We really learned so much about the importance of ocean health, blue finance, and the blue economy. And, as we mentioned, the oceans really are the lungs of Earth. And without a healthy ocean, we're not going to have a healthy planet. So we really need to, be engaged, care about nature, care about the oceans. And it's clear that we really all do need to work together to create this, new balance and new harmony with the ocean that no longer, depletes the resources, but instead we restore this incredible ecosystem and the vibrancy. And like you mentioned, staying educated, getting involved with nature and getting involved in conservation activities and really helping to support the blue economy are just a few ways to help and get involved. So thanks to everyone for listening today. We really appreciate your support. And please don't forget to check out our free community at soulpods.earth to really learn more about ocean health, biodiversity, ocean volunteer opportunities, and job opportunities, as well as to connect with others like Dennis who are really passionate about making a positive impact for our oceans and for our world. So thank you so much again, Dennis, and until next time.
Huge pleasure. Thank you.
SoulPod Studio is made possible by listeners like you. Join the free SoulPods platform to become a part of our virtual community of changemakers. Links to our social media, website, and platform can be found below in the show notes. If you enjoyed the show, feel free to rate and review our podcast. Thank you for listening and for your support.